Today's guest is someone I've known for maybe, I think, 1.5 years in terms of conversationally, but we've seen each other in Alan Weiss's community for about a couple of years now. I definitely call him a friend or a collaborator. We've worked on a project together. We definitely learn from each other too. And I brought him on the show, and this is a wide-ranging conversation. It's sort of a 50-50 split between the growth of a business. So in terms of if you're starting your facilitation business or consulting practice, Brendon talks through the various iterations of his business, as well as the other 50%, which is his process for workshops, what he thinks workshops are all about, how they play a part in his business and how he drives that and how he prepares for that too. My guest today is Brendon Baker, and he's a leading expert in driving change that actually pays off without burning everyone in the process. He has led and guided over $10 billion in transformative projects and programs. And through it all, Brendon has learned 3 things. First, change is hard, so we need to ensure it's worthwhile. 2, the answer often lies in simplicity. And 3, methodologies don't work and best practices are often awful in real practice. What a great last line. He's based in the rural outskirts of Canberra in Australia, that's our capital, and is the father of 2 young girls, so he's likely running on coffee as you listen to this. As you listen in, you'll hear the story of his business growth. I really like how he talks about his language. Pay attention to it. So he says things like corporateness, which I really like. Another cool line is rock and roll. Brendon uses that all the time, but it just brings in that sort of pragmatic language to the work that he does and tries to move away from corporate speak. I guess the key thing I really took away from this is how pragmatic he really is in terms of how the application within a workshop is really important. So rather than waiting for your groups to do the work, learning theory and then having to go forth and do it in their day jobs, it's like, no, actually make meaningful progress and meaningful change within the workshops that you're delivering. We also riff on the perception of last minute work. So there's that big perception that doing things last minute is not great. It's seen as scrappy or inadequate, but Brendon says it's efficient. It's a really good call out. You can reach out to Brendon Baker. We'll put a link to everything that he does in the show notes for this one, or visit valuablechange.com. And he'd love you to connect on LinkedIn and share one key takeaway. Enjoy the episode. I'm so excited to welcome onto the podcast the delightful Brendon Baker. Brendon, it's great to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
Now, I did want to share with listeners, I kind of was laughing in that intro and Brendon's laughing back. It's a very relaxed atmosphere because only a couple of minutes prior to hitting record, we're frantically both trying to set up our equipment and get it just right. If you're watching the recording on YouTube, hello, this is a very different angle. I'm actually recording this on my phone. Brendon, you're in some new digs?
I am. I've just moved to a bigger office too, so I can do more of this type of stuff. So it's all very exciting.
It is exciting. Now, tell us about that, because that's kind of your growth. A lot of businesses, you can tell that they're growing when they move offices and get bigger buildings, like they have like satellite offices. Tell us your story about the business that you've created and the work that you're doing now.
The short answer to that is this is the 3rd office. So every office has been bigger as it's gone. So hopefully that's indicative of growth. But in short, my business is all about helping leaders make meaningful changes in their reality, which sounds esoteric, and I don't mean it to. But in essence, I've written a couple of books, one of which is called Valuable Change. And that's very much the goal of my work, is helping people create more valuable change.
It's not esoteric at all, because you talk about reality. Why do you think reality is such an important thing to call out?
So it's because we all tend to get lost in this corporateness. I mean, I haven't always done this. And in fact, one of the prep questions you gave me was, what are the watershed moments throughout your life? And there was one in particular that, I'll be perfectly honest, led to the book, where I was sitting there at a client's site and I could see people that were losing sleep, that were stressed, that were frantic, they were really worried about hitting these deadlines. There were several tech projects happening with this client, and they were really worried about it. And yet they had no clue on what the projects were actually going to achieve. There was no vision on that at all. It was just, we have to get it over the line. Why? I don't know, but we do. And there was just this disconnect, and there was this tunnel vision. And I looked back and realized that this was a consistent throughout the vast majority of my career, in terms of I've seen this again and again and again across clients and different organizations. And even when I wasn't in a client helping role, but when I was actually hands on the tools myself, it was a recurring theme that there was this initial thinking around, why are we doing this up front? And then, they build pitch decks or whatever, business cases and things like that. They write 30-page business cases. And then as soon as they get their funding, they shelve it and they get on delivering. And then they just worry about the delivery. They assume that they're right. And I mean, I've come to call that a point of arrogance, which I'm not saying that anyone here is arrogant, but it's a point of arrogance because they think that what they're delivering is right. And ultimately, they don't know. And so there was just this surreal moment. When you have these moments where it's like you pull up from your body.
Yes.
And you just have these moments where you're just present, you're just aware. It was one of those. And I could see the fault. I could see the frustration and the stress and the waste that was happening. And I knew that I had to do something about that, or at least as much as I possibly can. And so I started writing my book that afternoon.
I love that. I mean, we can talk more about your book in a second. I mean, a few points I want to double click on. I mean, the first is, it's interesting you mentioned tunnel vision. I was talking to a CEO today, and we were talking about peripheral vision and the importance of just being more open and how that's really important across your business. I'm curious though, because when you were talking about the people that you observed just busy doing the doing, I mean, I've certainly been that person, and sometimes it's been someone else that has actually lifted us up above that. Have you ever been that person that's been so involved in it, and then you kind of wake up one day, you're like, what the hell am I doing? Have you been that in there too?
Well, yes and no. I mean, in that I've tended to have a very proactive career, in that it has, it's probably the kindest, one of the kinder ways to describe it. I have had recruiters in the past say, "What, you move around a lot." And it was because it was very intentional around, I was delivering projects. And so I was there to do a job, to solve a problem. And this is early in my career. I did the job. I solved the problem. The problem was done. It was time to move on to a bigger, more challenging problem. So there weren't that many of these moments of, what am I doing? Because I tended to keep that problem in focus as much as possible. But I do wonder if it's a mix between my love of simplicity and my tendency toward laziness, if I'm honest, where and I think it's a happy union. Laziness gets a bad rap, but I think it's a happy union between the two, in that if you focus on what truly needs to matter, it needs to change, and what matters, then you don't have to do as much work, and you don't have to do like all of this stuff on the peripheral. You could just focus on shifting the dial. And that has been my approach through my career. And now that's very much what I help people do on their projects, their programs, their portfolios, their transformations, all of those pieces.
It's funny that you say laziness. That is not even on the top 100 adjectives I'd use to describe you, Brendon. I mean, I know you quite well now. It's funny that you see yourself that way. But maybe, I don't know, but you are smart and very intentional in the way that you do things. So I'm curious in terms of your workshops. I mean, you're there as an intervention, really. That's what your workshops are, to like move people to cut out that extraneous sort of work. How do you approach that with clients? And when do you tend to, because I know you do a lot of different work, you do advisory, you might get stuck in, but when do you tend to see workshops as a real tool for helping clients like focus on that simplicity and make the progress they need to make?
Workshops tend to take two forms in my business, but to be honest, I try to bring them as close together as I can. So workshops are for teaching people new things and for collaboratively solving problems. And I like to bring them in as much as possible because we learn best if we are directly applying. And so even the ones where I've been brought in to go, hey, I need you to teach all these people how to lead change. I'm like, cool. Is everyone bringing in a project to this? And the answer is, well, yes. And I go, cool, excellent. We're going to apply every single one of these tools directly to their project in the session. So which makes it a hands-on direct use of solving their current problems, which is nice.
Yeah, I agree with you. Something I write about in the book is, I guess one of my frustrations with workshops is you go in and you get given everything you need, but you don't actually get time to apply it in the workshop. You got to do it after the workshop. So it's like, it's not actually a workshop then. It's like a theory shop, a content shop, but it's not a workshop. So that's one of my frustrations, is like, actually by you gifting them time within that to work on something that's real, it really makes a shift. I'm curious around, Because like we've been in the workshop environment together and I've seen you do your stuff and like get people rallied around things and really have some sort of their own watershed moments and light bulb moments. How do you prepare for that? Do you have like your favorite tools that you tend to use?
So as far as tools, I've got this is it. This is the only thing that I tend to use. It's a remarkable that I'm not plugging them because I'm not an affiliate, but you know what? I will plug them. They're great. I enjoy them, even though there's nothing in it. But it's my notepad. And what I will tend to do is I will look at what we need to cover in the workshop. And then I'll, at a high level, and just basically go, what are our key beats? What are the key things we need to cover? And majority of the time there will be, I've got existing activities and everything else. And it's basically like putting a puzzle together and then lacing it around that, which is really nice and easy. I don't go too deep. I don't go too crazy because 95% of what I run is my own IP, which makes the note-taking and prep much easier because it came from here. So I just have to look at it once and go, oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about here. And then I can riff and I can rattle, which is really nice. But as for how much prep I do, maybe don't show this to any of my clients, but in all honesty, I have to prep last minute because if I don't, I forget it. So I will, a couple of days before, I'll sketch out a run sheet or a game plan. And then normally on the plane, or if the Uber ride is longer than 25 minutes, it'll be the Uber ride over, I will go through and refine and finesse and have it ready to go. So it's last minute, but that's on purpose because that way it's fresh in mind, it's handwritten, so it's all up in here. And that's just how I recall things. So then I rock and roll from that point.
It's really funny. So the dichotomy of what you said, it actually relates to what we had Jason Fox on the show recently and Andrew Hollow, and they both talked about sort of winging it, last minute preparation, and the three of you are highly successful and really great at what you do. Yet what you also said in the same breath was, don't tell my clients this. They said the same thing. So what is it with the perception that last minute equals scrappy, last minute equals not good enough? What do you think is the deal with that assumption?
Yeah. In fact, I often, it's a funny reflection point because I'll often actually, I have coached a client on this before where they were worried about being last minute and they felt like they were lazy or unorganized. And I told them they were just efficient. And that's essentially what it was. They were efficient. They were able to get it done. And they knew in their mind that they were able to get it done in 3, 4, 5 hours prior to the deadline. And even though they had 3 weeks, they knew that they could spend the first 2.5 weeks or more on something else, and then they would still get it done at a high quality before the deadline. I think it's efficiency in terms of what it actually is and how I would typically tend to reframe that. But as for why it seems that way, I think people like to think they're getting a heavy time investment. But when you hire someone like myself or Andrew Hollow or because I also know Andrew, you're getting the years of experience, right? You're not just getting that, the several hours of prep. You're getting the years of experience and the scars and the stripes that they've had on their journey on the way.
What I'm reminded of, because I think that also relates to the fact that you're using your own content. It's in your own mind. It's not like you're pulling out and trying to find out. And something I write about is the difference between like digging for content and then curating content. So digging is like digging in your own mind, what's useful here. Curating is, that's when it takes a lot of time because you're on Google, you're listening to podcasts, you're trying to find who's the expert on. That's where the time delay actually occurs. And I think this really links closely to your book because even with like the 2-hour workshop blueprint now, like people are asking me questions about workshops and I can just pull content or things that I've said from the book. It's just there. It's packaged. Have you found and now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I wish I'd written a book sooner because it's like, it just distills, it simplifies what you're thinking. Similar for you in terms of pulling out models from your book, and it's just super easy to repurpose that in your work.
It is, but there's been a funny journey with those. I mean, my book's been out a bit over 2 years now. Well, yeah, both of my books. And it's funny how a model can evolve the more you use it as well. So you're right in that I do pull models directly from my book. And I find that, my models are designed to be widely applicable and very simple so that they're able to be used in a vast heaps of different situations. But there are models that are not in my book. There are adjustments to the models that are sitting in my book that I don't teach anymore because I've changed my mind on it. right? These things are evolving. And I mean, there was a quote by an author, I can't remember who it was, but they said that the moment that you hit publish, you realize what you should have said. And that's kind of how it is in many ways. Like a book is a standalone position of, hey, this is what we think. And it's a lot of good knowledge and a lot of exciting stuff. And your book's the same, right? It's a lot of amazing stuff. But I'd be curious to find, if you and I have this conversation in 2 years, as to whether you would go, oh yeah, I would change this now, which is where second editions and third editions and things like that come from, because we keep learning, we don't stop. And so it's a funny journey.
It reminds me, and this is how we met, was actually through Alan Weiss's community. And he always says, stuff that he says 2 weeks ago is already obsolete, and he can change his mind. And he's so cool with that, just being, oh, I said that, yeah, I don't believe that anymore. I think it's a real sign of strength. But now that we're talking about Alan, I want to talk about something that you mentioned and how we started talking and working on some stuff together. I can't remember the phrase you put against it, but the power of being in a community, it's like you're automatically peers just by being in the same forum. You gave it a cool name. Do you remember that?
I don't remember the exact term, but I vaguely remember the conversation. I think what you and I were talking about was, where are we getting the value from in some of these communities? And because I know you're in a bunch of different communities and you run your own as well. And I'm looking at doing something similar. And you will tend to get value from the leader of the community, but there'll be just as much, if not more, value from the connections you get within the community. And that's certainly been a point of leverage. One of the key takeaways I found from being in Alan Weiss's community and similars is you tend to see what a path forward looks like. There'll always be someone who is down the line further than you. And so you can look at them and say, do I want that? And if so, I have a vague idea of how to head towards it now, which is saying something. I mean, it's often quite hard to find role models or people to look at and to emulate. But I find that's one of the key values out of these communities is you can look at people who are where you would like to be.
Yeah. And then also ask yourself that question, do I want to be that person? Do I look at their lifestyle and think that's kind of cool? Or working in corporate, I looked at the managers above me and I was looking at them going, I don't want that life. Like you said before, no sleep, constantly stressed. It's I'm not buying into that. There's some members of Alan's community I definitely want. I want their cars, that's for sure. And you talk about change, but you're also, this is quite meta for you because you're looking at shifting your brand. And I know there's people listening to the show that it's kind of like when you're in business or you've done something for some time, you kind of get a bit sick of it, you've outgrown it. And I feel like that's what it's been like for you. Tell us about your journey at the moment. This is kind of like a work in public moment for you. What are you thinking in terms of your new direction?
I mentioned a few minutes ago how we're always learning. And that's certainly been the case for me in that I've had 4 iterations of my business so far, 2 of which have been complete and utter, as in money went in and no money came back out is probably the best way to put that. And you learn what doesn't work. And that's just as valuable in many ways as learning what does. And also when you learn what works, you can see the opportunities and you can see the areas for growth, and you can also look at that. So I've certainly found that business is absolutely an ongoing education. And so you're right in that I'm looking at shifting brands. In fact, I sent out a proposal with the new branding on it, which is the first one I've sent with the new branding. So it's underway. It's the vision there is, I found that I was unintentionally limited. Yeah. And it was useful. The previous branding, which was Valuable Change, which I guess is the current branding, is really powerful and really useful because it tells you a bit of a message. But it was positioned me, the word change, I didn't realize how heavy and how much baggage there was across the industry. And how if you say the word change, people automatically default to 1 or 2 specific frameworks and a particular idea of change management, which is all about communications predominantly. And then, there's little bits and pieces. But when you're talking to clients, that's typically where they land initially. And that was never my intent. My intent with the word was change in its truest, I guess, most dictionary form, which was A to B, right? Like we need to change from A to B. That's it. That was all I was trying to reflect. And so I guess I unintentionally walked into limitations. And I found that the business, although it's growing really nicely, was starting to become commoditized. And so, yes, there is a rebrand on the way, which I see as just a stepping stone in the evolution that is this. And with that rebrand, the intention is also to build in the ability for scale, which is the next challenge. I mean, the initial challenges for anyone, I mean, this is First Time Facilitator podcast. And if there's anyone listening here that are looking at solopreneur or, entrepreneurial endeavors, getting from 0 to 1 is a lot of hard work. But then when you're at 1, 2, 3, 4, you start with then looking at what's 10 look like and what does 50 look like? And that's a whole new set of learnings and a whole new set of growth. And that's essentially the discussion that I'm having with my colleagues, my peers, my wife and myself around let's see what the next step looks like.
Yeah, great. I mean, this whole thing around you moving offices, you talking about up-leveling now, it reminds me of this quote from, it was the Australian Open. I think this is like 20 years ago, one of the players. I think it was Goran Ivanisevic. He was talking about how like 2 years prior, he was playing on one of the outside courts. Then he played Margaret Court. This year, he was playing in the Rod Laver Arena, which is like the centre court of Melbourne. And then he goes, maybe next year I'll be at the MCG. It was like a really funny line around just like that scale of growth and that trajectory as well. I just wanted to share that and reflect that back to you. And it's exciting seeing you like rebrand, and because a lot of times sometimes when we have success, we think, oh, just keep doing more of the same. So you're kind of like disrupting, your brand a bit by doing this.
I mentioned that I've taken a very proactive approach to my career. And, you asked, why are you doing this? I tend to set goals, career goals based on 2-year timeframes. And across my career, I've loosely doubled my income every 2 to 3 years. And that has set a pace that always keeps me looking forward and always keeps me looking, how do I now double again? Now, how do I double again? Like, what is that next step? And that has very much shown me the moves that I need to make to keep growing. Because I moved rather quickly. I mean, at the beginning of my career, I started as a graduate, and within 4.5 years, I was senior management, not basically sitting underneath executives. 4 years out of uni, and it was that mentality of how do I keep moving this forward? How do I keep ratcheting this forward? And looking at who is sitting in that next income level, that roughly double, and what are they doing? What have they got, and how do they get there? And then finding ways to short circuit that on the way, which now sound like that I'm only focused on the money. But I mean, the truth is the first half of my career, that was the focus. I've now shifted my thinking in that space, in that money's just the lifeblood of a business. It's not the point of the business. The point of the business is to deliver a valuable service, at least in this case. And the mission is whatever your mission is, which in my one is ultimately helping people break out of the shackles of this corporate stuckness that we're in and actually change reality. That's ultimately the goal of why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Wow. I love that. I love that you're articulate about that. And you think, it's tough to find out what that mission is. And sometimes it does shift. As you were talking, I was even thinking your 2-year way of looking out is really interesting. And it's not the 7-year itch, it's like the 2-year itch. Like, how can you sort of make that faster as well? One of the people that I follow, Jenny Blake, she always talks about how can we make twice as much in half the time? So I'm always trying to navigate that. I agree with you on like building, but I also want to do it like bringing back the lazy card. How can we do it more quickly? I've got a question for you. I mean, you talked about thank you for sharing about the first couple of businesses, and you made mistakes, and you just shared that you learn sometimes more from the mistakes than you do the wins. And a lot of us hire coaches, we hire advisors because we want to avoid the mistakes. Yet sometimes they'll say something to me, I'll do the opposite, because it's almost like I need to make the mistake to really make it land, unfortunately. That's just me. Is it just me? Or like, how do you navigate mistakes, being aware? Do you avoid them, or do you just like, it's part of the process?
I can assure you that you're the only one making mistakes, Leanne. No one else is making mistakes. No, absolutely every day, absolutely every day. It is part of it. Like whenever you are pushing into something new, whenever you are growing and pushing, you are going to make mistakes. That's the nature of it. That's what you're nervous about. Like, people. I often coach people around and teach people around fear and comfort and discomfort and building momentum and things in those spaces. And one of the main fears, especially around career, is a fear of embarrassment. It's one that we've all felt in various ways. And yet the people that tend to have the most satisfying careers, I've found, are the people that go, yeah, screw it, let's go for it. And do it anyway and push through it. And yeah, you're going to stuff it up sometimes. But so what? So what? Like anyone that's ever sold, which I know you sell and I know I sell, and anyone that's in our position who is, growing businesses is selling, and you are going to get rejected. You're going to get ignored. You're going to get rejected. You're going to, well, hopefully not abused, but, it can get to that point where it's going to be really confronting. But that is the nature of this beast. You can't help everyone, but it's all leading towards growth and improvement.
Yeah. I love that you coach people on the fears and something. So the other day I logged onto Amazon and I've had my first, it was 100% 5-star reviews. And I think that's because a lot of people in the audience. So thank you for reviewing it. Now, someone gave me a 3-star review and I was like, and I was like, I've been reading The Courage to Be Disliked. It's something I read every year. There's something about knowing not to take it personally. And I think this relates back to workshops where you can have your smile sheets and you have, 95% of people found value in what you did. And then there's that 5% that just sort of tear it apart or are apathetic. How do you deal with feedback like that?
Yeah, I think it's something that comes with experience, in that the first time you get feedback like that, it sucks. It just sucks. You'll go, what? Because in an everyday basis, so you and I went out to coffee or whatever, we wouldn't, if we gave each other feedback like that, it would be couched. It would be framed in a way that we can handle. But when it's a stranger and you're putting yourself out there and you're doing the best you can, and it's a stranger or it's, a workshop participant or whatever it is, and it's after the fact, so there's nothing you can do about it, and you sit there and go, oh, they didn't like it. And they went, oh, that sucks, right? And initially that sucks is, it's going to hit you. But then you do it again and again and again, and the sucks changes. It goes from, oh, that sucks to, that sucks. Okay. And you just move on, right? And it's the same feeling, but it shifts and it doesn't linger as long. When I first started selling, and I've done a lot of direct marketing for my business as well. When I first started selling, I had a lot of, I would spend a day and a half after a negative sales call, ruminating and thinking and going, what went wrong? And now, if I get off a sales call that didn't go quite right, it's okay, couple of notes, all right, move on. And that's just something that comes with experience. It's just something that comes with being in the arena for long enough.
I love that. Yeah. It's same with running workshops, speaking. You have to get time on your feet. You cannot will yourself to get better. It's actually, you have to go through that. And that's something that coaches advise. You can't just get that train. You need to be in the arena, putting yourself in that line and working through it. But it's an interesting age we're in with social media, like LinkedIn, seeing what people are up to and that comparison thing as well. It all plays out. And I think it's really nice to hear that reframe of this sucks. It's the same word, but it's just the energy that you're putting into that. This really sucks versus, we'll move on. And it's all about that resilience piece. So Brendon, if our listeners love to find out more about the work that you do and they want to get in touch and they found some inspiration in what you shared in terms of your growth and how you want to bust people out of the whole corporateness, great phrase, by the way, where should we send them?
Yep, variablechange.com is where I am. And even after the rebrand, you type that in, it'll just divert you to wherever I end up being on the web. So variablechange.com, or honestly, just connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm there and you can message me, we can chat, we can do all of that. So look, I'm on LinkedIn or variablechange.com.
Fantastic. And you've also got a really great weekly newsletter that you might want to give a plug to.
Thank you. That's very kind. So that is the Change Leader Weekly. And so that goes out every Thursday, Friday Australia time. And that, to be honest, the whole goal of that is I'm not selling anything through it. It's just questions to help you open your mind or see things a little bit differently. And that thing has grown from 25 people that I knew wouldn't yell at me when I sent it to them to, I think we're at 1,100, 1,200 people now. So it's been steady growth over its life, and it's continuing to chip forward, which is really nice.
I think it's wonderful. It's a really great sort of punchy read, really great questions in there that will give you a bit of a reframe on a weekly basis. Congratulations on that growth. Thanks so much, Brendon. Always great to chat to you. Brendon and I are always like WhatsApp buddies. If I need like a fresh perspective or someone just to be like, if I'm complicating things, you just voice note Brendon and you get a like really sharp, insightful response immediately.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thank you.